Jefferson put on Burr, he said Burr wants to separate the western states from the eastern. He didn't. He wanted to go down the Mississippi, go to New Orleans, go over to Mexico, and make himself emperor. So Jefferson arrested him for treason, which he had not committed, and it was a bum rap, and everybody knew it, and he was exonerated. But your what-if question, yes, I think that had Burr gone on to be president, which was the original arrangement with Jefferson, though Jefferson was a noble but sly and devious man. And I must say, Richard M. Nixon, who had the most wonderful unconscious mind, says in Six Crises, General Eisenhower was a far more sly and devious man than people suspected, and I mean that in the best sense of those words. I agree with our caller here that the War of 1812 might have ended with an invasion of Mexico and of Canada.
Our conversation with Gore Vidal is just halfway over. We're going to take a break of about 5 minutes in length. During that, we'll show you some upcoming programming here on Book TV on C-SPAN 2, and then we'll be back for a second 90 minutes of in-depth conversation with Gore Vidal.
In just a moment, Book TV's Live in Depth with Gore Vidal continues. I Love You, Ronnie is a new book by former First Lady Nancy Reagan. It's comprised of letters her husband, former President Ronald Reagan, wrote to her over the years, and her reflections on the letters. The book is number 3 on this week's New York Times bestseller list. Last week, Mrs. Reagan signed copies of the book at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. You can see that event following our Live in Depth with Gore Vidal today at about 3 p.m. and later tonight at 9:30 Eastern here on Book TV, only on C-SPAN 2. This is a new collection of essays called The Best American Science Writing 2000, and next Sunday on Book TV will feature a panel discussion with contributors to this book, including Stephen Jay Gould on the scientist discredited by Darwin, Natalie Angier on the fashion sense of prehistoric humans, and Oliver Sacks on how his family introduced him to science. The panel also includes the book's editor, James Glick, on the whole field of science writing. The Best American Science Writing 2000, next Sunday at noon, and again at midnight. The Southern Festival of Books takes place in Nashville, October 13th, 14th, and 15th. Southern writers will gather to take part in book signings and panel discussions. And Book TV will bring you live coverage of the festival Saturday, October 14th, here on C-SPAN 2. Here's a list of the best-selling nonfiction books from the Conservative Book Club. At number 1, Sellout by David Shippers. It examines the impeachment proceedings against President Clinton. Next, The Triumph of Liberty, Jim Powell's collection of stories about people who have contributed to America's fight for liberty. Thomas Jefferson, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Cicero, and others. At number 3, The Long March by Roger Kimball looks at the effect of the 1960s Cultural Revolution on America. Book TV is featuring Mr. Kimball's book this weekend. The World According to Gore is a critical examination of Vice President Al Gore as he runs for president by nationally syndicated columnist Deborah Saunders. It's at number 4. Next is From Dawn to Decadence by cultural critic and historian Jacques Barzun. It's a look at Western cultural life from the 16th century to the present. Year of the Rat, How Bill Clinton Compromised U.S. Security for Chinese Cash, is by Edward Timberlake and William Triplett. It's number 6. 7th is The Homeschooler's Guide to Portfolios and Transcripts by Loretta Hewer. At number 8, The Irrepressible Rothbard by Llewellyn Rockwell. What is a Man by historian and commentator Waller Newell uses writings from Shakespeare, Plato, and the Bible to define masculinity. And finally, at number 10, The Average Family's Guide to Financial Freedom by husband and wife team Bill and Mary Toohey. The Conservative Book Club focuses on politics, religion, history, and current events from a conservative point of view. The club was founded in 1964 and currently has 70,000 members. For more information, call 1-888-GET-BOOK.
What do you like to read?
Well, I love poetry, and I love literature from all over the world.
Right now I'm reading The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera, and it's an amazing book. It's so weird because he is Czech and I'm originally from Southern Africa, but the characters, they're so great. It's like I can relate to some of the characters in the book. I can relate to exactly what is going on in the book and what he's talking about. It's just things that we've all probably thought at some point in our lives, but it's not, been written down. It's not been articulated. And when you're reading it, you're like, oh my gosh, makes so much sense. So that's what I'm reading right now.
Give me an example of one of those things that you find so interesting.
Okay, what I find so interesting in this particular book, there's a passage where he's talking about when you are an expatriate, because his characters are Czechs living in Switzerland. And he says something about when these characters do not have a safety net, you don't have the comfort of having your family there, all your friends, and speaking the language that you were born, into, that culture you're born into. So you don't have that safety net. And sometimes I have felt that way because I'm an expatriate to this country. So it just makes so much sense, and I really love the book. But I also love children's book, and the BFG is my favorite book of all time by Roald Dahl. So I love that book too.
History books, History of Venice by Norwich. There's a Hitler history book by Lucas I like, and my favorite is All the President's Men by Woodward and Bernstein.
Why do you like that book?
Because the movie was based on it, and I liked the movie.
Which did you like better, the book or the movie?
The book was 10 times better. Told a lot of stuff they left out in the movie. It was really good. That was my favorite.
Throughout the fall, book fairs and festivals will be bringing together authors, publishers, and readers. And here's a look at some of the events coming up. The 25th Annual Deep South Writing Conference gets underway October 10th. It takes place on the University of Louisiana's campus at Lafayette. Nashville, Tennessee hosts the 12th Annual Southern Festival of Books. The 3-day event includes readings, panel discussions, and signings by authors from around the world. In November, the Buckeye Book Fair happens on the 4th in Worcester, Ohio. It'll highlight new releases written by Ohioans and books on topics relating to the state. The Military History Book Fair takes place in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, from November 10th to the 12th. It's part of the town's 15-day event honoring America's veterans. Also in November, the Kentucky Book Fair on the 18th in Frankfort on the campus of Kentucky State University. And on the first weekend of December, the San Bernardino Latino Book and Family Festival gets underway with educational workshops, book signings, and poetry readings. If you'd like more information about these fairs and festivals, go to our website, booktv.org. There you'll find an expanded festival list and hot links to festival websites. And please let us know about book fairs and festivals in your area, and we'll add them to our website list. Write to us at Book TV on C-SPAN 2, 400 North Capitol Street, Northwest, Suite 650, Washington, D.C., 20001.
Gore Vidal joins us for this month's in-depth program, a 3-hour conversation, which we are halfway through, and right now has a brand new book out, which is called The Golden Age. It is the 7th and final in a series of American history told in a historical novel, and also a play that has been revived on Broadway. A few writers looking at your life right now are suggesting that you're in something of a golden age yourself. Does it feel like it?
No. 75 is not a golden age. It has certain elements of lead, particularly the knees.
Are you beginning to think about legacy?
Are you, you want to be in my will?
Certainly.
Is this
Shall we
a hint?
talk later?
Yeah, we'll talk. I just brought a codicil with me.
About preserving what's important to you beyond the works that have been published. Do you think about that sort of thing?
No. As Groucho Marx once so wisely said, how he would be remembered, he said, "What has posterity ever done for me?" That's my view of the future. future doesn't exist because it's not there yet. When it's there, I won't exist, so we go our separate ways.
You've, I would suspect, describing your writing place surrounded by your books, collected quite a number of them over the years. Is it of interest to you to have them preserved as a collection so that others may see your work?
Well, if others are interested, I mean, universities and so on, my papers are transferring from one university to Harvard, to the Houghton Library. And I think that's, yes, I do think that, for instance, correspondence, I have letters from everybody, that I've kept everything for 70 years. So it will all be in one place. Yeah, I like that idea, even though I won't be around. But for historians, and I think more of them than anybody else, yes.
Part of this program that's very important are your telephone calls, and next is one from Massapequa, New York. And you are welcome to this conversation with Gore Vidal.
Yes, hi. I'm reading these questions so I'll be a little more accurate. The first one is, what caused or prompted you to write Life from Golgotha? And just as a comment, the book doesn't leave the Christian faithful with much awe about the centerpiece object, i.e. the sine qua non of their faith.
Okay, did you understand the question?
I didn't hear a word.
You didn't hear a word. You know, you are not plugged in. I'm going to ask our technician to plug you in while I repeat the question.
Okay, sure.
Thanks very much. The question is about the book, Live from Golgotha,
Yep.
and wanted to know what prompted you, and her observation was that it doesn't leave those of the Christian faith with much about the centerpiece event.
Well, it is, after all, a satiric work on the founder of Christianity, who was, of course, not Jesus, but St. Paul. And it has the theology in it is not bad. And it's basically anti-Pauline, that he reinvented Jesus, who intended himself only for the Jews as a possible Jewish Messiah. And Paul wanted to make him international for everybody. And that was a distortion of the original Christian message to the extent that we understand it at all. So I wrote a comedy about it, which I thought the subject deserved. I myself have become seriously well, I wouldn't say agnostic. I think I'm closer to atheist, but I love Christian quarreling, and I wrote a book called Julian, about Julian the Apostate, the 4th century emperor, who tried to stop Christianity in its tracks. And that was favorable to the Emperor Julian and not so favorable to the bishops that he went to war against.
I think what we're going to do, your technology is not quite, we're not able to connect it. So we've got a speaker in here. You're just not plugged in. We didn't do that after our break. So we'll have to listen to the next call on speaker and make sure you can hear. Las Vegas, you are on the air. Welcome. We don't hear the speaker out here. Las Vegas, go ahead, please. Las Vegas, go ahead.
Hi, Susan, and hi, Mr. Vidal. I'm a great admirer of yours, especially because of your frankness with which you express yourself. And I enjoyed your monograph you did for Odonian Press about the American presidency. So I had a couple of questions. First, what American presidents, if any, do you admire or did you admire? And would you say a few words about Noam Chomsky, most of whose books I have and whom I also admire very much? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, of admirable presidents, it's very hard to separate them from the times in which they lived. Some very marvelous men have been forgotten because they were not in interesting times. I would say that, well, John Quincy Adams, I suppose. He served only one term, which was not successful. But I quoted from him earlier as an anti-imperialist. He also, when he was Secretary of State, he wrote the Monroe Doctrine, which has President Monroe's name, but it was his work. He was the first perhaps the last American president to understand foreign affairs and what America's role should be, which was do business with everybody, have no special friends, no special enemies, no prejudices, and certainly not be the world's policeman. So I suppose J.Q. Adams. Noam Chomsky and I are allies. We do the same sort of thing, but often with the same sort of audiences. We did an anti-Gulf War half-hour discussion for some independent, at the time, television people. No one, the two of us with an interlocutor, no one would put it on the air, not even at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning in San Francisco would they put it on air. I've never seen such fear across the land.
I wish you'd called us. We would have aired it.
Were you around at the time of
The Gulf War, yes.
Gulf War? Well, I think we must have, because